Welcome to Learn the Sword. Today is just a killer day. It must be at least 110 degrees. You know what else is another killer? Is being able to hold the sword where it doesn't feel funny. A lot of times when we hold a longer sword, our left hand feels pretty good, but our right hand starts feeling shorter and shorter every time we strike. And we wonder why. Why is that? Well, let us go over a couple of these thoughts. First, let me get a sword. As a general rule, we hold the sword like this. Left hand is in back, right hand is in front. There's a baby 3 to 4 fingers difference between both hands. This is basically how you hold the handle. Now sometimes you see larger handles, especially in Western countries where they make these designs that you can purchase most everywhere. The cool thing about the longer handle is it makes you feel like you have a lot more room. But there is nothing better than a classical Japanese sword with an average 10 to 11 inch handle as a general rule. I have smaller hands, a little shorter hands, so it fits good with me. If I could palm a basketball, this might feel a little short and tight, but then again, that's the way life is, so work around it, make those adjustments, and become proficient with a Japanese classical blade. The hard part is that when you start throwing the sword up and you start throwing it out, after a few minutes, you start feeling that this hand starts moving back this way, and all of a sudden, this right hand the arm is a little too short. That's because the angle of attack is a little different than what you're used to. When you start throwing the sword way out there like this, because it feels better, and your hand slips back, what happens is the tip of the sword, or the monouchi part of the blade, starts hitting the top of the target, sort of like chopping onions. Whereas if your hands were situated back this way, when you strike the target at this correct angle, it would slice through the target instead of chopping, which means a slice won't damage the blade. It will cut through materials a lot better compared to chopping, where you could chip, bend, you could bruise the blade. Moreover, you probably break off the blade inside what you're cutting. So a lot of the technique involved is making sure you get the blade out of the target as well as you get it into the target. A lot of times people put a blade in a target and it takes them a while to get it out. Remember, in battle, you don't have that extra time. So the correct way is being able to look at the front of the sword here where it's not up like this, but it's actually bent this way with your arm straight and then the sword coming up, almost like a V shape here. Where you have this V shape here and this arm coming out, this arm now, and I'm just talking general dynamics and angles, is basically parallel to the floor. And this one goes down. So now you can see that this angle is this way. The problem arises, this is what you learn, but after a couple of strokes of coming down and hitting this way, most bodies go back and they start bringing it up this way and bringing their hands back. So bring your hands down. Make sure when you strike, it's all about the tip of the sword striking the target, not your hands. And that's one of the biggest factors to deal with. That is that your hands have a tendency to do all your blocking and striking for you. The hands actually are behind the blade, and it's your drivetrain and your engine that pushes the tip of the blade to the target in a timely fashion. So remember that. Back up here like this. Lift up, throw out and cast. Lift up, throw out and cast. Lift up, throw out and cast. You can see that in any casting that I do, my hands stay the same. Now there's another point I'd like to talk about just briefly, and that is Shiburi, and that is ringing the blade. You have to remember, if I hold the sword like this and I strike something, chances are it's going to go out, especially if my opponent is an experienced swordsman. What I'd like to do is make sure that your hands are on top of the ridge of the blade, of the handle, and then turn your right hand counterclockwise and your left hand clockwise and bring it in this way. So even though your arms feel real constricted and it feels like you're wearing handcuffs or duct tape around your hand, you can't do anything, the more constricted your hands and your arms in this weird angle is, the stronger the tip will become, and your cutting patterns will be stronger too.